Hello, my little Luxxes. This is another episode of Luxxy Charms, and I'm your host, Cosplayer Charsie Luxxx. And today's episode, we are going to be doing a movie review on the 2010 film Frozen. And for today's episode, I gladly brought back my Winter Witch cosplay, except of course I upgraded her because right now I am wearing a fun skiing outfit because, you know, it's gotta go on brand and on theme with today's movie review. As much fun as skiing can be, especially if you're out and about with some friends, I don't think that the trio that are the main characters to this film would quite agree with that statement, and come with me as I talk about this film and you shall find out exactly what I mean. Now, obviously, I'm going to start this off by giving spoiler alerts, viewer discretion advised. So if you have not seen this film and you do not want any spoilers, this is your forewarning. And of course, I will discuss the cast and the crew for this film as well. Shawn Ashmore as Joe Lynch, Emma Bell as Parker O'Neill, Kevin Zegers as Dan Walker, Ed Ackerman as Jason, Rylia Vanderbilt as Shannon, Kane Hodder as Cody, Adam Johnson as Rifkin, Chris York as Ryan, Peter Melhouse as Driver, Will Barrett as Sullivan, Adam Green as Guy in Chairlift number 1, and Joe Lynch as Guy in Chairlift number 2, and director and writer is Adam Green. And as always, I apologize if I mispronounced anyone's names. So as stated before, this is a movie review on the 2010 film Frozen, and last week, I did the reactionary commentary on the film The Thaw, and as I had stated before, Aaron Ashmore was in that film. Well, Shawn Ashmore is one of the leads in this film. I don't know what's been going on lately, but I just can't get my throat to clear and just to talk right lately, so it's always entertaining when I'm going to be recording. It's like, so halfway through, am I going to be losing my voice? Am I even going to be able to record the whole episode, let alone that usually I want to try and record back-to-back episodes. It helps me out, and especially since there are weekends that I work at my job, it's just so much easier. But anyway, back to talking about the film. Last week was actually the first time I had ever watched this one. For the longest time, I had no interest in watching this one due to the contents of the film and knowing about it. This isn't a horror film, but it's a psychological thriller, drama, that type of thing. And to me, sometimes psychological thrillers can be more freaky than the actual horror movies, because this is something that would seem plausible, something that could happen, and just the horrors and the thoughts of freezing to death, or in Dan's case, what ends up happening to him. So I will start off with a quick plot synopsis of the film. So this story revolves around two best friends, Dan and Joe, and they're big skiers, and Dan decides that this time he wanted to drag his girlfriend Parker along with him. Of course, Joe's not too thrilled because this was supposed to be him and his best friend's time. This is something that they had done yearly, but you know, Dan brings his girlfriend along, and Parker, of course, she's trying to learn, and she gets roped along in bribing the chairlift guy because they don't have enough money to pay for the chairlift. So they ask Parker to bribe the guy to see if they can use the chairlift for a cheaper price. Now, mind you, there is no problems with that. They're able to bribe the guy. He's, well, somewhat okay with it.
This is gonna sound really stupid. It's just that my girlfriends and I came all the way up from Salem State. I was kind of the dumbass who said that I could pay for all 3 lift tickets on my mom's credit card, and then I left her credit card at the gas station.
Right.
No, I mean, I totally have money. Just not enough for all 3, you know?
How much?
50?
I could lose my job.
But it's later on when they go to use the chairlift for the last time of the evening, and they realize that the lodge is going to be closing early due to weather, really bad weather that was coming. Since they had spent so much money bribing this guy to use the chairlift, Dan wanted to use it at least one more time. Joe wanted to have a good run, as he kept calling it, because they were on the bunny hill for Parker. So they're able to talk the chairlift guy into letting him run one more time, even though he kept trying to tell them that they were closing early for the weather. But they managed to convince him to let them run. Well, unfortunately, there is a mix-up when the one chairlift guy, I believe his name was Jason, was helping them, had to switch with the guy to fix a schedule conflict that was happening. And unfortunately, the new guy misunderstood Jason and his instructions. And when 3 skiers, snowboarders had come down the hill, he thought those were the 3 that were left on the lift. Unfortunately, those were not the 3 main characters that were still riding the lift, so the lodge closes down for the night, and our 3 main characters are trapped 50 feet above ground on this lift as it is left there, and they are left to be stuck in the air for several nights due to the fact that the ski resort was only open on the weekends, and they were trapped up there on Sunday evening. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty terrifying to me. And like I said, the idea and the thought of freezing to death, no. I mean, as everybody always likes to say, like, what would be the worst case scenario to die? In fact, that's even brought up in this film. One of the conversations while they were stuck up in the chair, they start talking about what would be the worst way to die. And one of the things to note was what Dan spoke about. And Dan had mentioned that he feels like the worst way to die would be by being eaten alive by a shark. Not necessarily like a surfer, if the shark comes from below and you don't know what's coming. He's like more like in Jaws, where you see it coming and you know that your death is about to happen.
What do you think the worst way to die would be?
That's not morbid.
Yeah, seriously, that's kind of spooky, Dan. See, I think being eaten by a shark, that'd be the worst way to go. Not like, one of those surfers who gets attacked from below, never sees it coming. Like the, poster for Jaws.
The chick on the Jaws poster was hot.
She was?
I don't know, she's naked. Naked chicks are hot.
But if you actually saw the fin coming towards you, it'd be worse than being eaten, I think. I mean, knowing this giant animal is coming at you and it's gonna eat you alive,
Which, we'll get back to that, because that is kind of foreshadowing for one of the deaths in this film. It's also ironic to bring up that scene due to the fact that one of the productions companies is called Bigger Boat, or A Bigger Boat. And the scene that they start talking about is the Jaws movie. And that's where it kind of stemmed with director and writer Adam Green, and from the famous line of, "You're gonna need a bigger boat," from the film Jaws. So I love those little Easter eggs. In fact, there are a ton of Easter eggs in this film. So we're gonna go into a deeper dive in this film now and to do a more thorough overview. It's easy to talk more thoroughly about this one anyways because it's a very small cast. I believe there was only like 16 people on IMDb when I was looking at the cast, and most of them were actually uncredited on the film itself. So knowing from Adam Green, when he had done this, that in 2010, I want to say this was just before he did Hatchet, or after Hatchet. Oh yeah, because the other Easter egg happened in Hatchet too. So yes, Hatchet came before this one. And what's neat to note about Adam Green, which, I mean, it's kind of common for a lot of directors and writers and that, is that they like to commonly reuse the same people, reuse their friends. I mean, it makes perfect sense. You want to work with the people that you know and trust. I'm gonna go so deep diving into this one. It's kind of funny considering the fact that I had no interest in watching this one for the longest time. And then when I got on this theme and I started researching it, and I realized that it was Adam Green who did the Hatchet franchise, which I absolutely love those movies, and they're hysterical, they're slashers, they're fun. So it was interesting seeing this version of Adam Green. Alright, to get more on topic for this one. So, as said and stated, is that Joe and Dan have been friends their entire life, and that it just was this huge thing that they would do every year, that during the ski season they were out skiing, and that was always their thing. Well, of course, Dan gets a girlfriend, and what does the typical person in a relationship want to do is they want to have their significant other be a part of their life. That's the typical, the norm. So obviously Joe's going to be jealous in a way, and especially even more in his frustration was the fact that because of Parker still learning and not being that good at snowboarding, they were on the bunny hill. So that was Joe's thing, was the fact that he wanted to have at least one really good run. But unfortunately, since Parker was there with him, they were on the bunny hill the entire time. That's why they ended up going to the ski lift at least one more time later that evening, was so that Joe could have his one really good run and go to the top of the hill, or the top of the mountain. I shouldn't call it a hill, it was a mountain. That's when they get to Jason, the chairlift guy, and he's saying, no, we're closing early. There's a storm coming in. We got really bad weather. Well, of course, these are characters that in their head, they just spent $100 to bribe this guy. They only had a few runs, and they wanted to have that one last good run. So obviously, they're able to finagle their way and convince this guy to let them go up in the chairlift one more time.
It was early. You're only open 3 days out of the week, man.
Why don't you write a letter?
Why don't you give me my money back?
What money?
Man, we've only had like 4 runs. Can you give us a break, please?
830.
What?
It's number 830.
Okay, look, just one more time, please.
Sorry.
I'd give you more money, but I gave it all to you.
Hey, you got a pen? It's not about the money. We got weather coming in, and we're trying to clear the mountain. There's nothing I can do.
Okay. What if we run straight down, like the quickest run ever?
We'll be like wicked fast. We give you $100. Come on.
Please?
Hurry.
All right, like I said, wicked fast, like the wind.
7860.
But the problem that ensues is the fact that while they are going up the mountain on the ski lift, another worker to the lodge comes over to talk to Jason and lets him know that there has been a problem with the schedule and that Jason has to leave in order to talk to their boss to get it corrected. Well, in him trying to relay a message to the guy that's taking over for him, he misunderstands what he says. And unfortunately thinks that the next 3 skiers that come down the hill, that those are the final ones.
Pendergraph wants to see you in his office. Something about the schedule next weekend?
I'm not working next weekend.
Well, that's what you thought.
Come on, Rifkin. It's my brother's bachelor party. I put in for it 2 months ago.
Go talk to the boss. Backing out.
The best man.
Ready to shut down?
There's 3 more on the way down. Wait for them, and it's all set.
I'll set down here.
Let's go home.
There's also another person that comes over the intercom saying that that was the last of the ones on the hill, not realizing that there were still 3 more on the ski lift. Although, fun thing to note for a fact on that is that the voice over the intercom was Dee Snider, who was a part of Twisted Sister. So that was really cool. And another thing to note is that his son Cody is also a part of this film's crew, and he does a small cameo where he's actually spotted in the lodge when they are walking around. The 3 main characters are walking around, I should say, and that he has on a Twisted Sister shirt on. So little Easter eggs, like I said, they're all over this film. So you have the 3 main characters who are now trapped on top of this mountain, and they start realizing the peril that they're in when all the lights to the lodge start slowly turning off.
Big chick fell at the top and twisted her leg, you know? And I was like, okay, fine, people, just hoist her off to the side, keep the line moving. But no, they had to stop, celebrate it right there. We all just stay on the lift, freeze our asses off. Honestly, by the end of it, I couldn't feel my fingers. I was sitting there.
What? Come on.
Oh, come on now. Man, this is so messed up.
And then hell breaks loose throughout the night. These are things that I will also note that I learned through my research and everything, is that a situation like this, especially nowadays, is not possible. And the reason why is because of the fact that ski resorts have people that they call lifties. Lifties, I think is what they were calling them. And the whole idea of that is that at the end of the evening, at the end of any day for a ski resort, they have somebody go up the mountain one last time and double checks all the ski lifts to make sure that nobody's there. And it's a safety precaution to make sure something like this in this film doesn't happen in real life, which is comforting. It's a nice thing to note. But obviously it's different for this movie, and we go into the evening where you have the 3 main characters who are stuck on the loft, or the ski lift, the ski loft. It goes to the dark point where, as telling people, this one has a bleak turnout, and one of the scenes is that Parker's kind of talking when they were talking about what would be the worst kind of death out there. And one of the things that she's kind of noted was talking about 9/11, where they were talking about that people would rather jump out the building than face what was going on inside. And it kind of was a dark note when Parker kind of says, like, you know how bad a situation has to be in order for somebody jumping it to seem more plausible than the current situation they're in. Of course, that ends up happening to Dan. That he can tell the longer the night that they are stuck in this loft or ski lift, that he can tell his girlfriend Parker is getting frostbite, she's getting sick, so he's obviously worried about her, he loves her, he cares about her. So he makes the choice and decision that he was going to jump down 50 feet below so that he could go and try and get back down the mountain to find some help. So that's kind of putting in the note of the idea of jumping seemed like a more plausible idea even though it's 50 feet in the air. So obviously when he jumps, he breaks his legs and he's not going anywhere.
Oh, my legs are broken! Oh my god!
Can you move, Dad?
No, I can't move!
Okay, hold on, baby.
What are you doing?
I gotta get down.
No, stop! You're gonna get hurt. Calm down. No! Stay there! Don't get out the chair! Stay on the chair!
How bad is it?
It's bad! It's really bad. The bone is sticking out of my leg! Ah!
So then it continues on for the scene, which is the main reason why I had no interest in watching the film when I first heard about it, is the scene where the wolves show up. That is from Dan's section when he was talking about what would be the worst way to die. He had said it would be a shark eating you, and if you saw it coming. This definitely went in the same lines as how Dan said he didn't want to die, except this time he could see that it was a pack of wolves and he could see it coming. And it's a very sad scene, like heartbreaking. I will flat out say that I had my fair share of times I cried during this movie. I'm a very emotional person, and the scene where Dan is dying from the wolves, and you have his best friend, who's known him his entire life, and his girlfriend that are stuck above him, and there's nothing they can do to help him, and they're stuck having to listen to him get torn to pieces by these wolves. Forewarning, very bleak, very, very hard deaths in this one.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
Don't. Lynch! Yeah, man? Don't you let her look! Don't you fucking let her look! No, I won't, man.
So you carry on from there, and the fact that you have Lynch, who's Joe Lynch, that they call him by his last name a lot, that he starts coming to the realization that if they need to get any kind of help, that he's gonna have to climb across the wires to get to one of the poles in between, because these poles that hold up these lofts actually have a ladder that you can climb down. But of course the wolves are still around. It just keeps going and going for keeping you at the edge of your seat the whole entire time. And it's one of those where you can kind of think that it'd be a slow burn, but it keeps enough of the energy going throughout this that it's like you don't stop. You feel like the entire time you're a part of the horror that's going on in front of you. And especially for poor Parker and for Joe, that first they're going through the grief and the sorrow of losing Dan, but then of course they go through the moments of anger and everything else that goes on, and just certain scenes that happen that make you cringe and you're worried. And like, for instance, at one point Parker literally freezes her hand to the bar, which I don't know how the heck she did, but regardless, she froze her hand on the bar, and that scene, oof, that one is a hard one. That one is so hard to watch. I cringe the entire time when you see her hand froze to that bar. And apparently they did that shot in just one take. So, I mean, good job to Emma Bell. That's phenomenal. But the other thing to note about this, since, as they had stated, that this was filmed practically. And what that means is that this was filmed at the ski resort, not in the studio, and it was on site. And they were in the lofts, those ski lifts. They were in those ski lifts 50 feet above ground. And that Adam Green and his director of photography, Will Barrett, were the only two that were willing to do the scenes for filming when the ski lifts were moving. Because obviously it's very dangerous. It is how many feet up in the air? 50 feet up in the air. And that the rest of the crew really wasn't willing to, well, also Adam Green cared about his crew, so he felt that if he wasn't willing to do it himself, he wasn't going to force somebody else to do it. And also Adam Green kind of had to work through his own fears because he has a fear of heights. For one of the other fun Easter eggs in this film is that in the first time that the group is going up the ski loft to go skiing, that the ski chairs do have a stop, a random one at one point, and the two disgruntled patrons that are behind the group happen to be Adam Green and Joe Lynch doing a cameo scene in here.
Okay, what asshole couldn't get on the chair right?
What the hell, right?
Dude!
Oh, that's good.
And the fun part is that there are a lot of cameos in this. Like I had mentioned before that Dee Snider does a voice in this. You have Kane Hodder, who is also in this, and of course he's been in a lot of Adam Green films as well. He's the one that is in the machine that is first going up the mountain. And unfortunately, he doesn't find the group because he's called away before he goes all the way up the mountain. But from what I understand, that lifties, however they would put it, that they would be going up the mountain like that. Also finding out that another reason why this type of situation would never happen is the fact that, yes, the resort itself is only open to public skiing on the weekends, but maintenance still happens every day on the mountain. In fact, on the Monday mornings, as far as I understand, that one of the first things they do is start doing maintenance on the lofts and the mountains and making sure everything was okay from the previous day. But obviously, for the movie's sake, it is a lot different than what would happen in real life, so we should be rest assured that this should not happen at a good ski resort. But one of the other things to note is there's so many things to note in this movie. Like I said, I could go and go and go, and how many cameos are kind of thrown in here. It's, even though it's a small cast and everything, that the character Shannon, that at the time was Adam Green's wife, who was doing her cameo appearance.
Come on, I'll get you up. Come on. There you go. I'll just tighten these up for you. No problem.
Aw, look at Lynch.
Yeah, look at him. It's a chick magnet.
He's all right?
Yeah.
And also to note that the ski resort, that even though this was supposed to be taking place in Vermont, this was actually filmed in a ski resort out in Utah. One of the funniest things to note is that on the first previewing of this movie, that apparently a woman fainted while watching this film at the scene when Dan first jumped out of the ski lift and broke his legs. So some people try to say that because of the altitude of where the film fest was at, that could have contributed to it. But at the same time, with it happening at that scene, I'm going to assume that she literally fainted with watching his legs break and the sound of it, because I can understand that was a scene that definitely made me cringe as well. Now, as always with going into deep diving and talking about the film, I don't want to give away the complete actual ending to the film. I would hope that anyone would give this movie a chance. It took me forever to give it a chance, a good 13 years technically, since it came out in 2010, but we will move into what are my thoughts of this film. Now, I do like this film. But yes, this is a hard, heavy film and everything, but it is done so well, and it's well written, and it's so opposite to what I normally think of Adam Green's work, because when I think of his work, obviously I think of Hatchet, and those have comedy in them, and dark humor, and, well, comedy and dark humor are essentially the same thing, but you know what I mean. This one is not comedy, this one is serious. And on top of that, like I said, since this is something that could possibly happen, luckily there are safety protocols and procedures so that this doesn't happen, but it could happen. And the thought of freezing to death, starving to death, being put in these terrible situations like for these three friends, it seems more terrifying than me watching the Hatchet franchise. Those are entertaining to me. Horror movies are entertaining. This is a psychological thriller. It gets into your head and it makes you think, oh my god, what if that happened to me? And not necessarily if you're stuck in a chairlift for a ski resort and that. You could have the possibility of getting stuck or trapped somewhere where you could have the possibility of freezing to death or being out in the woods in the middle of nowhere and get the possibility of being attacked by a wild animal. And especially in my area, there are wolves, there are mountain lions, sometimes there are even bears. Luckily, not very often are there bears and mountain lions, but there's always that possibility of something happening. So something like this takes your mind to that darker, bleaker point, but it is very well written, it is very well done, it's suspenseful, it keeps you at the edge of your seat, and the whole entire time it's just, you're rooting for these three characters, even though, like, especially at the beginning, you kind of think that these guys are kind of shitty, considering the fact that they don't want to spend the money to go up in the lift, but at the same time, knowing the amount that it was to cost to go up the lift, oh my god. Whew, yeah, no. But, all in all, I did enjoy this film. Yes, it was a hard one for me to get through, especially since I was watching it by myself. So, but it was a good film. Now, do I recommend this film? I do recommend this film. I kind of recommend that you watch it with somebody that you love and trust, and that you have somebody to hold their hand for the hard scenes. You don't necessarily have to be into horror to watch this one. This, like I said, it's not a horror film, but there are some heavy, dark scenes in this, especially the wolf scene. And, well, there's a couple wolf scenes, and that was another thing I wanted to note, was the fact that in all the filming for this, that the wolves were technically only on site for filming for 4 days. And that the scene with Dan, where the wolves were swarming him and circling him, that really was being filmed and that was taking place. And that in one of the scenes when the black wolf gets a little close to Dan's face, you can see him looking to the side, trying to look to the crew like, okay, I'm a little uncomfortable, this one's a little too close for comfort. Once again, I definitely recommend this then, because it's like, as little as I had any interest in watching it before, and then doing a deeper dive into it, and I wish I would have known it was Adam Green before, because he does this kind of stuff, these little Easter eggs and just fun little notes that are mixed in there. It's nice to see what kind of writing that he can do, and that I've just always thought he was a phenomenal writer and director, and I've always loved the Hatchet franchise. So this one was a nice change of pace for what I was used to. And so yeah, I recommend this one. Well, my little Luxxes, I'm starting to get very warm in my ski gear here inside a warm, heated house. If you can't tell, I can't hear my heater in the background since it's such an old heater, it's loud. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this movie too. As always, in the comments below, have you seen this one? Have you not? Would you like to see it? What did you think of it? Did you enjoy it? Did you dislike it? I can 100% understand if somebody dislikes this film. This one's a hard one, very hard. And it's different than the typical horror films where you can watch it and find it entertaining. Like I said, this one is a psychological thriller that could possibly happen. But as always, thank you for joining, and if you would like to follow me on my other social medias, you can follow me on my Twitter for Charsie Luxxx with 3 X's, or on my Instagram for Charsie87. And I will always keep saying, thank you so much for joining me here. I appreciate every single one of you that come and take your time out of your day and join me and discuss our love of horror and love of cosplay and everything else that we can just love and enjoy together. But as always, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and no matter what time of the day it is, I hope you have a Luxxy Charms kind of day. Bye. I'm gonna be coughing a lot. Although I think the juice is making my throat worse than better, so switch to water now. Not right now, kitty. Callie, go lay down, sweetie. Go lay down. That was Dan's complaint when they were back at the lodge and getting some food, was that he wanted to do at least one good run. So they managed to go back to the lift so that they can go back up the mountain, and this time they wanted to go to the top of the mountain to have a good run for Joe. I think I said Dan earlier. Let's redo that. And his director of photography